Skinwalkers and Mexican witches. I'm not necessarily an expert on either of these subjects. However, it is common knowledge that in Mexican folklore, brujas, that's witch for you non-Spanish readers, are capable of shape-shifting abilities. The most common of which is being able to shapeshift into an owl. Growing up, I always heard of these Mexican witches. My mum used to talk about them, and even my grandmother did. This past holiday season, I was fortunate enough to visit my grandparents. They live in a small city in the state of Chihuahua in Mexico. Having the opportunity, I brought up the topic of witches. My grandmother told me a chilling tale. She stated that when she was about 10 or 12 years old, she used to live in a small rural village, around 2 to 3 hours out of the city that she's currently living in. She mentioned how one night a villager killed a black rooster. Apparently this rooster was going mad and killing some of the hen in the chicken coop. The next morning they found a dead naked man in the exact same spot where the rooster was laying dead that night before. The reason why I found this so interesting is because my grandmother is a part of a tribe of indigenous people known as the Tarahumara, a native tribe of indigenous people situated in the northern west of Mexico. The reason why this is important is because a big portion of the southwest of the US used to be Mexican territory, correct? What if there is a link between these skinwalkers and these shape-shifting witches of Mexico? It's just a thought, but considering how many people in Mexico believe in these witches, it's kinda hard not to think of these witches and skinwalkers being related in some way. P.S. If you know something or someone with strong ties to Mexico, ask them about these witches. I guarantee that they have stories already to tell you. P.P.S. I know this isn't factual or anything, but I just wanted to bring up the topic. I haven't seen anyone bring it into the discussion, and it has a lot of potential. Narwhals, the skinwalkers of Mexico. Before this whole virus outbreak began, I visited family in Mexico. Being Mexican and Native American, I grew up hearing stories about skinwalkers, shapeshifters, narwhals, and other paranormal beings out there. You grow up knowing that these things are out there and are meant to be respected, and let them be. But you never are truly prepared to ever face such beasts. Hell, I never thought I would. Now, I'm not saying I am the beast, but I do have a family member who happens to be a narwhal. The way I found out wasn't the most pleasant thing, and I'm still in shock somewhat. I don't know much about these beings, and I'm slowly starting to do my own research. I just sort of have to get my crap together to accept what I recently saw. I asked my Kukum grandma about narwhals, and she explains that they are skinwalkers. Some were born with it due to a family generational curse. Others gain the ability through black magic. Brujeria and whatnot. She even brought up the Rougarou of Louisiana and said they too are skinwalkers. Maybe I will tell my story on here once I'm ready, if you guys want to hear about it. But for now, I want to know if anyone has ever heard of a narwhal. Narwhal skinwalkers. Are they the same? What do you think? Camping in New Mexico, and something is mimicking my voice. My husband and I are currently in a schoolie camping on BLM land, Bureau of Land Management. He prefers not to use the bathroom in our schoolie, so he went out to the outhouse. After about 20 minutes he came back and is really freaking out. He asked me if I was outside the bathroom, meowing at him. I told him I wasn't and that I'd been inside reading a book, cuddling our dog. He said he kept hearing a meow in my voice. Now, I know what you're thinking. This could just be a cat. However, my husband and I meow at each other. We've been doing it for over 15 years, and I have a specific way I do it. It really can't be mistaken for a cat. I usually meow when I want him to come look at something. That is what he swears he heard. He said he felt dread each time he heard it, and all of the hairs on his arm stood up. I questioned him if there were any chance that he was out there hearing an actual cat, and he said that there was no way, and that there is no doubt that it was a human pretending to meow, but he's adamant also it was in my voice. He's so freaked out he refuses to leave the bus, or let me take the dogs out. So what do you make of this sound? Should I be worried? Mexican Skinwalkers? I, Mexican 42. I've been reading some stories about American Skinwalkers, and I realized either Skinwalkers are different in Mexico, or you guys don't know nothing about them. Legends and documents have told us Skinwalkers had much to do with the Mexican and Aztec Empire foundation. But in general, Skinwalkers are people with the ability to turn into animal shapes. It isn't clear exactly how, but there is more than one way to do it according to the stories that I've heard, and has nothing to do with the devil and such. In Mexico, we call them by their name. They are given narwhals, and they can transform into a wide variety of animals as early as 4 years old, such as snakes, skunk, squirrels, turkeys, pig, cat, dogs, armadillo, horses, bulls. These animals are the most common among the Mexican Skinwalkers, at least in the stories I know. Having an encounter with a narwhal is having a paranormal encounter. You get the same feeling. Narwhals are nocturnal 100%, and if they are still in their animal mode when the sun rises up, they die, usually in their beds. Only men can be narwhals. Women don't have the energy compatibility to do so. Women have a different gift. Depending on age, practice, lineage, and other qualities, is your primary animal that you can transform into. If you ever have an encounter with a narwhal, your life can be in danger. Narwhals are after something all the time, working, they say. Narwhals work on watching over the land, the cattle or herd, stalking the girls, scaring the other men or possibly opponents, or they are just after enemies, stealing other people's stuff, and most of the same time, they're just dicks. That is the reason I think Mexican narwhals and American/Canadian skinwalkers are in fact different. Anyway, thanks for bearing with me. P.S. Just so it's clear, as I said, women cannot be narwhals. Women are born natural witches or brujas, and they are all up to energy sucking, specifically from babies and messing around with other women. Brujas can turn into a fat black bird, a turkey, kind of, but heavier, a ball of fire and a big flat floating face. So men are the narwhals, women are the brujas. Rural northern New Mexico, 1987. My ex-husband may have seen a skinwalker one night. He worked the overnight shift in the big city of Santa Fe, NM. Well, Santa Fe is bigger than the small village we were from that had a 2-lane road to travel to get to the main highways. He would leave our house at around 10 p.m. to get to work by 11 p.m. One night I got a frantic call from him when he arrived at work. He sounded almost hysterical. He said he was driving down the usual road on the highway to get to the place that he worked and came up to what he thought was a cow sitting in the middle of the road, like they do sometimes. He slammed on his brakes and honked his horn, annoyed that he was going to be late. He then waited a bit and honked again, and the cow stood up, and then he realized it was standing on its hind legs. He then realized it wasn't a cow, maybe some sort of coyote or wolf, he thought. He then saw that it was actually a naked man. As it turned to face him, but its head was that of a dog, the creature slammed its hand on the hood of his car, then bounded off into the hills. It took him only 3 steps and it was gone. He couldn't make out where it went, but my ex said he drove as fast as possible, as quick as he could to get out of the area and go on to the well-lit highway. Once he arrived at work 20 minutes later, he called me, not making much sense. When he claimed to calm down a bit, we were both tired and tried to make out what he possibly could have seen. Even years later, would talk about it once in a while. Maybe it was a dog man, maybe a drunken man wearing a mask. It wasn't until years later where it came up again and we realized it could have the possibility of being a skinwalker. Maybe just some distorted version of it in the darkness and the headlights during the late night driving. Maybe he was hypnotized by the driving, but he still thinks he saw something out of the ordinary. Story time of the Skinwalkers of Mexican towns. I am Mexican American myself, but my parents are Mexican, and I grew up going to Mexico every year. There was once when I was 9 that I stayed at my grandma's and grandpa's ranch, and it was late night, around 2 a.m. I woke up to get a drink since my room and the kitchen were separate. I walked outside and saw my grandpa really mad and scolding a dog that he called Cisno. The dog started whimpering and walked out of the house. Turns out he was trying to steal food and a bag full of clothes. My grandpa never put clothes in bags. I never really cared about it until I got older, and my mum told me that the dog who was doing that was a narwhal, people who study witchcraft and turn into any animal. She told me that my grandpa had cousins who hated him and were really poor, and one was nicknamed Cisno. And my grandpa knew that it was him, his cousin, stealing his stuff because he had learned from his other cousins that Cisno was a brujo and would turn into a rat and a dog to steal from my grandpa. There was another instance where my uncle, who lived in the same town, once encountered a dog eating his corn. He got out and hit him in the face with a bat, and it hurt him really bad. Turns out that one of my uncle's family members, who was also poor, had lost all of their teeth and had been hiding in his small house for a week. He later realized this and knew right away it was him who was trying to steal his corn. Extra information. Narwhals from Mesoamerica are not known to attack humans, but are known to be powerful, and real narwhals are known to steal, scare, and make people seriously ill, but do more passive stuff compared to skinwalkers. Extra story, not related to skinwalkers. Aliens are seen a lot in Mexico. My grandparents live in a very remote hill far away from the city or airplanes. When I was little, I would always see lights flickering through the window and never cared to investigate, but my grandparents, till this day, say that they seen them and know that it is an alien. There was a specific instance when one of my grandpa's good friends said he was playing soccer in a field right next to my grandfather's ranch when an alien, green dwarf creature chased him and his friends all the way to the central plaza in town, where they just disappeared, never to be seen. I don't have proof to support this, but anybody in my grandparents' town will tell you with certainty aliens and narwhals exist. Even my grandparents, who are really old and grumpy, will swear that they all exist. I like to believe that creatures like this exist, but I always need evidence to support it for me to believe it too. So, since everyone from my family tells me about this, I can't truly say I don't believe it. I had to cut my camping trip in New Mexico short. Well, where I was at New Mexico, coyotes are common, and so I knew where I was staying I was going to see a few, or at least hear them at night howling. But what weirded me out was while I was eating by the campfire, it was starting to get a little dark, but I could still see. I start hearing the barking and howling of a coyote. I pay no mind because I didn't think that a coyote would come near a campfire. But then I realized that it's only a dog that I hear. This is weird because coyotes are pack animals, for the most part. And it's getting closer. So, I'm chilling out, about to go to bed, when I start hearing footsteps that sound like a dog's, and I can hear it getting closer and closer. And I'm not really in the mood to have the thing eat all of my food, so I have this 375 loaded with snake shot for rattlers and weirdos alike. So I just shoot around into the ground and remember hearing something run off, and at this point I was tired and had some more hiking to do in the morning, so I turned in. I woke up a couple more times at night and heard something walking around my tent and campsite. I wasn't really scared because, like I said, I have a 357 and most dogs aren't going to try to get into a tent, but I'm not really a big fan of shooting wild animals like that because it's a waste. It even walked off after about 15 minutes, so I went back to bed. When I woke up, however, I found out that it was human footprints surrounding my campsite. And I thought I was just going crazy, or maybe I mistook a coyote. But while I was following the tracks, they slowly turned into coyote tracks, and that's when I remembered the story a friend told me about the Skinwalkers. And I remembered he told me, you don't fuck with Skinwalkers. The best thing to do is just to get out of Dodge. Mexican Skinwalker, or something like it. So, my father used to be a federal judicial officer for the Mexican government, and his jurisdiction would change from time to time on a case-by-case basis. He was very young and passing by a village around 8 p.m. when they stopped at a cantina for some food so they could continue on the road ahead. Back then, only sheriffs or very top officers had vehicles, but the rest had to use public transport to get around. Except for them, it was all free at least. They stopped to eat and make conversation with the locals when an older gentleman asks where they're going. And my father says, as there's no buses or taxis in this village, that he and his friend were planning to walk about an hour and a half to the next town that was down a dirt road. The old man looks surprised and asks, are you going there right now? Don't you know the story? To which my father replies no, that they're not from around the area, and it's just a simple walk, and there'll be no problem. Besides, they were armed, and laughed it off. The old man seemed a bit pensive when he continued, and told them that there was a story from the village and that people don't walk that road at night because of 3 demon pigs. My dad and his buddies laughed, but the old man was not amused. He was serious. He began to tell them that people that walk down that road at night have gone missing, and that he and others have seen the cause 3 demon pigs. My dad laughed again, but the old man ignored him. He went on to say that when he was a younger fellow, he had a run-in with said pigs. He said it was late, and was walking home to his village on the old dirt road from his cousins in the next town, when suddenly he heard a voice. He turned to see 3 pigs, black hair like that of warthogs, and eyes black as night. He couldn't see the natural reflection of light in the animals' eyes that they usually had, and was coming over with a sense of dread and fear. And so they began to speak and laugh. The man said he was terrified and couldn't muster up the will to move. They spoke vile things about the man's family and spoke of a gruesome death. Each pig spoke with a different tone. Once he was able to muster up movements, the man sprinted back non-stop to his cousin's house, where he got himself together and didn't go out for the rest of the night. My dad listened, as he is respectful, and he didn't say anything smart this time, but he still insisted that he was going to walk that dirt path with his buddies, as he had to. And so the old man offered him a ride there, free of charge, saying he didn't want them to walk there at night, whether they believed him or not. Now, this is the end of my father's encounter, his recounting of this time. I do find myself wondering sometimes that if he did walk that path with his buddies, would he be here today? Would I be here today? Would he have seen these 3 pigs? I guess thankfully we'll never know. Encounter with a Skinwalker and Bigfoot in New Mexico. This is a true experience. Hi everyone. I've been reading a lot of your Skinwalker experiences, and since I'm a paranormal investigator who actually goes out on the field searching for these creatures, I decided to share my own encounter with what we strongly believe was a Skinwalker and later a Bigfoot. I have some friends near Shiprock, New Mexico, that are big into researching things about Bigfoot and Skinwalker sightings. They have been featured in shows like Finding Bigfoot, Coast to Coast, and countless podcasts that speak about the paranormal, and on several History Channel programs. These people are the real deal. A few years ago, my wife and I were on vacation, and part of our trip would be driving through their town. Taking advantage of this opportunity, we decided to spend a night out there and hang out with them. We met up, went to dinner, talked about our personal paranormal experiences and recent Bigfoot or Skinwalker sightings. I wanted to experience searching for a Skinwalker evidence for myself, so during the course of our conversation, I asked if they would be willing to take me out to the field with them in the following night and search for these elusive creatures. Being that most of them are Native American, they were very hesitant, and only one of them agreed to it. The rest of the group decided to meet us on my last night there to take me Sasquatch hunting instead. The following day, my friend arrived to the hotel and picked me up at around 5 p.m. We must have driven about an hour and a half out of town, mostly through dirt roads, to a place known locally to have lots of Skinwalker activity. By the time we reached the location, everything was dark. He shuts the truck off, and, like in most paranormal investigations, we sit and wait, trying to listen for anything out of the ordinary. For the most part, it was quiet, other than a bunch of annoying crickets making noise. Nothing much else was happening. My buddy told me about recent sightings and his own encounters with these medicine men. Long story short, after about an hour, he told me to get out of the truck, walk outside and towards the front of it, to try and listen for anything. He said that if anything happens, he would immediately turn the lights back on and light up whatever might be there. Basically, He wanted me to be human, Skinwalker bait. I was hesitant for a moment, but since I had a weapon on me, I thought I'd be okay. But I also knew that bullets would do nothing to a Skinwalker unless they'd been blessed and have a specific type of white powder on them, which mine didn't. Just as I had made the decision to get out of his truck, the night turned even darker. This wasn't a regular dark night. This type of darkness had a purpose. It felt extremely ominous. It also got extremely cold, and we both noticed that all of the little crickets had gone quiet. After hesitating for a while, I decided to open the truck door and get out. But as I did, and had my foot ready to touch the ground, we heard a loud whistle. It wasn't a distant whistle, like the air brings towards you. This was next to us. It sounded like it was inside the cab of the truck. Obviously, I thought someone had snuck up on us, or that my buddy was trying to fuck with me, but when I looked at him, he had turned completely white. The expression on his face had totally changed. Seeing him that afraid, naturally, put me on high alert, and I tried to snap him out of it. He seemed frozen in place. The whistling continued a couple of times, and I was screaming at my friend at this point. Eventually, he came to his senses and began to react to what was happening around us. He then immediately turned his truck on. We grabbed our flashlights and looked over the place to see what the hell was going on out there, but of course we found no one and nothing. Feeling nervous and him being native, we decided to leave the place right away. The next day, him and a few other friends picked me up again and took me out that night to search for Bigfoot near the Shiprock Mountain. While investigating, we found what's known in the field as a Bigfoot nest. Inside the nest were tons of dried out, eaten animal carcasses and bones, mostly deer. As we were trying to figure it out, what had lived there, we suddenly heard a loud Bigfoot yelp. It wasn't a coyote or a mountain lion type of yelp. This yelp felt like you could feel it in your bones. You could literally feel the vibration in your chest. Of course, we are all searching around to see what the hell it was. I didn't see anything, but two of my partners saw something move up on the ridge. They were sure enough that whatever it was big enough to draw and cock their weapons for. About 10 minutes later, we began to hear several footsteps all around us. We couldn't see who or what it was because it was really dark, even with our flashlights turned on. After hearing these footsteps getting closer and less afraid of us, we ended up leaving the area. These are my personal experiences, and are 100% true. I don't expect anyone to believe me. My late friend J.C. Johnson and I had talked many times about what happened. I'm still in contact with everyone who took me out those nights, and I still go out on the field here in Nevada following skinwalkers, Bigfoot, and ghost sightings. My uncle's tale of a Mexican skinwalker. When he was young, as part of the Boy Scouts, they traveled to Chihuahua, Mexico. In this state, it is common to hear of legends about witches. They were camping in the woods. He and his friend were sent to fetch some firewood. He was wandering alone when he encountered a huge crow about 1 meter tall, around 10 meters in front of him. He saw it had a little bottle on its claws, and it was staring at him. Another day, he and his group were walking around the forest. There were a lot of waterfalls around the area, and he saw a woman on top of one with what seemed to be a bonfire in mid-daylight, doing some weird stuff. She did acknowledge them, but ignored their presence since they were too far. Hola amigos. ¿Cómo estás? I hope you have enjoyed today's video. As always, if you have, please remember to like and subscribe. It really does help this channel out. You can also leave a comment if you would like in the comment section below. Today, I know I missed it for the last couple of days, but today, for the special word to put down in the chat, let's just write Dino. D-I-N-O. Why? Because I'm playing with a dinosaur figurine. Why do I have that? Because I have a son. Don't judge me. Well, anyway, thank you very much for making it all the way to the end of this amazing week. We have gone through some terrifying encounters from the normal, paranormal, and the regularly unwanted kind. So again, thank you for coming along this journey with me. Tomorrow I'll be releasing my part 9 of the Somewhere Beneath Us story. I cannot believe that we are almost 10 stories into that 26-part series. Whew. It's going to be a wee word of fun, isn't it? Well, anyway, I won't drag this out. Have a good night or day, wherever you are. Remember to be safe, and, as always, I am Grim, and I'm, well, signing off. Adios, amigos.